Well, I want to take a moment to say hello to a number of people. I want to say hello to those who are watching this from West Lafayette, our West Lafayette campus, and to those who are watching online. We're glad to have you with us today. I want to say hello to a young woman at Domino's in West Lafayette. I walked in to get my pizza the other day, and the lady handing my pizza, she said, Are you Pastor Robby? I said, yeah. She says, my friend, she's been inviting me to come to your campus in West Lafayette, and I've not been able to come because I'm working every Sunday right here. She says, but I started watching. I've been watching every Sunday, and she said it's helping me. And so, hi, pizza lady. So glad to have you with us. Well, I was at my home church I grew up in last week, speaking at their missions emphasis. That was a great pleasure, but it's an even greater pleasure to be home. And I have today a message that kind of stands by itself. It's called Unsafe. And it's the idea that, God's not really safe. Sometimes we have a tendency to think that God is safe, that God will reinforce all of our ideas, that He agrees with us, that He's on the right side of what we think, but it's not always true. And in fact, God's not safe. He's not going to uphold our assumptions or our ideas, our preferences all the time. He's not like that. He's not like a salesman. I've got this one salesman. Every time he sees me, he insists I've lost weight. I was like, wow, what's the problem here? Why do I lose weight every time I see him? Because I haven't lost anything. It's because he wants me to like him, I guess. Or he's not like a hotel concierge that's just God's not trying to figure out how to serve you in some way. He's not interested in being an addition to your life. Instead, here's the vision of the Bible. It's that when you invite Jesus in, He takes over. He wants to take control. He wants to rule your life. He's a king. And the thing is, that means he's not interested in catering to our sensibilities or to our sensitivities or to make us feel comfortable. He wants His ways to rule in all the ways of our lives. And in the Bible, the writers of the Bible, they understand this unsafe nature of God. Jesus said that following Him involves denying yourself and taking up your cross and following Him every day. Now that's contrary to our modern way of life and the way that we want everything to kind of serve in an easy way, our sense of ease. But that's not how God works. In the Bible, you've got a number of prayers of people who recognize that. And they pray unsafe kind of prayers. And what I mean is, there are prayers in there. They're not like, fix my grandma's hip and bless the meatloaf and help me find Prince Charming. The prayers that we find often in the Bible, they're the kinds of prayers that if you'll pray them regularly and sincerely, they'll blow your life up. They will challenge some fundamental categories about you and the things that you want and where your life is going. And one of these unsafe prayers, then one of my favorite passages in the Bible, it's in Psalm 139. Verses 23 and 24. And because this is the kind of prayer that I hope that everybody here would start to pray in some way, this is a prayer I pray regularly, I want to ask you if you would, just read it aloud with me as I read it. Make it your prayer today. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Now you talk about an unsafe prayer. The psalmist, he's inviting God to come in and inspect him on some of the deepest and most private personal areas of his life. I remember when I was a teenager, I was given my grandmother's, I don't know how this happened, but I was given my grandmother's bedroom set from when she was a young girl. And she had this furniture that looked way different than it would now. It was from the 1920s or maybe the teens, the 1900s. And the coolest part was this dresser that had a mirror. And when you pulled out the top right-hand drawer, there was this secret drawer behind all that. And you could hide things in there, for example, unless your parents knew about it, which mine did. That's another story. But you could hide things in there, and nobody, none of my friends knew where it was, and I knew what was in the drawer, and that was kind of it. And then when I hear this prayer, I think about that drawer. Because I think that for a lot of us, when we approach God, we've got a secret compartment. We got some things that we're holding out on God about. And today, what we're going to do is we look at this prayer, we're going to look at how the psalmist prays that God would deal with all the compartments of his life. So we're going to break this prayer down into 4 parts. The first thing he's praying, number 1, is search my heart. Search my heart. He says, search me, God, and know my heart. Now, when you read that, you might think, oh, that's a nice thought. Search my heart and know me. Maybe you walk around thinking, everybody's basically got a good heart. Maybe you think to yourself, most people are just really good on the inside no matter what happens. You know what? The Bible doesn't say that. The Bible's got a very different view of the human heart. In fact, when it comes to your heart and my heart, this is what the prophet Jeremiah says. Jeremiah 17, the Old Testament, he says, the heart is deceitful and is deceitful and above all things beyond cure. Your heart is deceitful. My heart is deceitful. What does that mean? It means that every day it lies to you. Every day our heart tells us things that aren't true. Every day our heart tries to justify ourselves. Every day our heart, in the course of lying to us, tries to soothe our conscience and tell us, we're right, we're okay, our perspective is justified, whatever it is. Look at what the Lord says about himself. I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind. God can see your heart. So when the psalmist prays, search my heart and know me, what he's praying is, God, reveal what's in my heart. God, reveal the errors of my thinking. Reveal the lies that my heart tells myself. Now, some of these lies your heart tells you, it's like this. Maybe it's your heart saying, I'll only have one. And then you end up having 4 delicious donuts. Or maybe you tell yourself, as it relates to lust, you say, I just appreciate a nice physique. But really, that's not what's going on. Or you say, I'm not gossiping, I'm sharing a prayer need. She really needed to know about this other thing and all the ugly details. Or maybe, your heart tells you, well, you're not materialistic. You just like nice things. It's okay. Those are the ways that your heart kind of lies to you. And when you pray this prayer, God, search my heart, know me. Well, that's unsafe. Because God is willing to show you what's impure in your heart. The aim of the Christian life is to become like Jesus. And our hearts are the things that keep us from becoming like Jesus. For many of us, for example, When it comes to our hearts and the ways that our hearts lie to us, our hearts lie to us when it comes to our relationships to others. And so, for example, if you have a string of broken relationships, maybe it's with a spouse, or maybe it's with your children, or maybe it's with business associates, or people you go to school with. If you got a string of broken relationships, it may not be about them at all. It may have to do with your heart and the things that you believe about you. If you spend any time helping people in relationships, as I do, as a pastor, sometimes I sit with people who need help in their relationships. Maybe it's in their marriage, maybe it's in some other relationship, and you begin to ask the question, what is it that needs to be better here? Normally, what happens is the first person who speaks up says something like this: well, it would be a lot better if she, you fill in the blank. Or it would be a lot better if he would say this or do that or understand such and such. And the thing is, you can't really fix a relationship on that basis. No relationship is made better by you ever pointing out what the other person's doing wrong. It's made better when you figure out what you can do to improve it. Now, this prayer, search my heart, know me, God. It's probably going to end up revealing some things about you that you don't like. But that's not all the psalmist says. He says, test me and know my anxious thoughts. That's the next thing he says. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. What's the second part of this prayer? It's something like this: expose my fears. Expose my fears. What do you fear? Do you fear losing your job? Do you fear financial ruin? Do you fear being overlooked by people that you want approval from? Do you fear being alone? Do you maybe fear being stuck in a bad marriage? Do you fear success? Do you fear failure? Here's the thing, we've all got fears. We've all got things that condition us to fear, but we will never live the full life God wants for us to have when fear controls us. Remember what I said at the start? Jesus wants to come in and take control. When fear is in control of your life, when you fear circumstances and you fear people, you'll do anything to avoid the thing that you fear. You'll end up saying anything, you'll end up making compromises in a number of ways so that thing you fear doesn't happen. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. It's meant to root out, to make clear to you what you fear in place of God. Look how John says it in the New Testament, 1 John 4:18, there's no fear in love. But perfect love drives out fear. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. What's going on there? What is a passage like this telling us? It's telling us that as long as fear is in the driver's seat in our lives, we're never going to grow into the kind of love and loving person and receiving love that we could. Fear is something that holds us back. Elsewhere in the New Testament, we read that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. We've got to let love, power, and a sound mind rule our lives. Well, consider the third thing here in this prayer. The psalmist prays, see if there is any offensive way in me. See if there is any offensive way in me. I think that's really interesting, an offensive way. See, he doesn't pray, God, show me what I did wrong in the last 24 hours. Give me a list of all the ways that I broke the law. He doesn't say that. He says, Lord, show me what is offensive in my ways, in the way that I routinely respond to others, in the way that I routinely respond to you. Show me if there's any offensive way in me. That suggests something a bit deeper than just like one thing you did wrong. Show me if there is any offensive way in me. That's the kind of prayer that's inviting God to address our issues. That's inviting God, even though we might tell ourselves we're okay, for God to say, you know what, you're not okay. You know what's interesting is when it comes to the offensive ways in us, when it comes to the things in us that are twisted or that are crooked or wrong, we find it a whole lot easier to identify those things in other people before we see them in ourselves. You know, I know that I've done it, but you find it easier to say, for example, I understand why I make the mistakes I do. You say that about yourself. You say, I do whatever I do what I do so that I can just get by. I'm just doing the best that I can. That's the kind of thing we say to ourselves. That's the kind of latitude that we give ourselves. Or we say something like about ourselves, we say, they had it coming. They really deserved what I did. Or we say to ourselves, judge not, lest you be judged. So don't judge me. Those are all ways that we kind of excuse ourselves. And so we have this strength and ease with excusing ourselves, but with accusing others. Because the moment that we start excusing ourselves, what we end up doing is we end up accusing others. Did you see what they said? Did you hear what she did? She thinks she's on some kind of high horse. Can you believe how insensitive he was? And we find it easy to identify all the flaws in other people. But the psalmist, that's not where he's praying at all. He recognizes that his own heart needs a lot of help. He recognizes what's wrong with him, that there's something wrong with him. And he's asking God, show me what it is. Point it out. Put a mirror up to me. In Europe, my family and I, we lived in Europe for a number of years, and in Europe they have a different system for handing out tickets than we do here in America. In most places in Europe, the police are not waiting on the side of the road, seeing if you're going too fast and stopping you. Instead, they have these cameras set up. And I didn't realize this at first, I got to say. And I can remember going on a long trip in our family van. And, it just seemed to me at first that, they didn't care much about how fast you were driving. But the truth is, these cameras are set up, and you don't really recognize it. I remember going on this long trip, and I was driving at night. And I kept thinking that behind me was lightning storms, a lot of lightning back there. Instead, they were taking a picture of me every few miles about how fast I was going, and then they sent me a nasty letter and made me pay money. I'm pointing this out because, I just didn't even pay attention enough to what I was doing. All I knew was, hey, nobody's pulling me over, and so it must be okay. But actually, it wasn't okay, and they let me know. I think about my friend. He was driving around the ring road around Brussels, and he was going to the airport, and he was kind of in a hurry, and he got a letter in the mail and told him it's going to cost you $100. You were going 100 miles an hour, basically, and it's going to cost you over $100, this ticket. Please pay it now. Well, my friend, he was kind of he couldn't believe it. He was like, there is no way I was going that fast. And so he decided that he would challenge it in court. You know what? That's just not real smart most of the time when you got a speeding ticket. Anybody know? I do. It's not smart to challenge that. Well, my friend, he went to court and he said, prove it. He said, prove it, show me the picture. Well, the police went back and they were able to produce the picture, and it just so happened that my friend was on the phone in the picture. And so he owed an extra 300 euro. That's how that works. And they were like, yep, there's the picture, and you're on the phone, double shame on you, and pay us a whole lot more. Feels good. The point is, we just don't see ourselves sometimes for how we actually are. And that's why this kind of prayer is so important. That we pray, Lord, show me my offensive ways. Lord, show me what's broken in me. Show me what needs to change about me. You know what the scriptures say? They say that God disciplines those he loves. Maybe some of you are feeling disciplined right now. Maybe some of you, as you listen to me, you feel maybe some tension or anger, and I just want you to recognize God disciplines us because he loves us. God urges us to change out of love for us, not because he hates us. You see, that's our problem. We look at other people and we want to change their offensive ways, when in fact our ways need changing. We want to change their offensive ways because we don't love them. God sees our offensive ways and he loves us. He wants to show us what's wrong. So what are some questions that you can do to help identify your offensive ways, your sins? The first is this. I'd say you need to ask yourself, what do you keep denying? What do you keep denying? Maybe a few people have told you that you've got a problem in a certain area. Maybe something is hurtful or off about you, and you've been told this a number of times, and you keep denying it. Listen to me carefully. If a few people across different areas of your life, your family, your work, your friends, if a few people have told you the same thing about you that's off, stop denying it and embrace it. Start asking God to fix it. Something else you can do to ask yourself, that questions that reveal sin, is to ask, what do you rationalize? So like, what is it? What is it that you do and you know it's not right or even quite right, but you keep telling yourself that you deserve it? Or you keep telling yourself, hey, it's just my personality. Maybe you took a survey in the magazine in the doctor's office, and what do you know? It tells you this is what your personality type is, and this is just what you do. No. That's a question to ask yourself, and then to say, God, help me to stop rationalizing and help me to change. A third question you can ask yourself that reveals offensive ways is to ask yourself, what offends you the most? What offends you the most? And so the question here is, what is it? What is it that really gets to you when other people do it? That is likely instructive for you to see clearly something you do regularly that's wrong. And so ask yourself, what is it that you're offended by? And carefully review if you do the same thing. And when you think about sin, try your best to think about sin in two broad categories. The first category of sin to ask God about is sins against God. And usually, often, that's just how we frame up sin. Like you're breaking the 10 Commandments, you're doing something where you're breaking some command of God and you're aware of it, and so you've thought, wow, I sinned against God. But there's a second category of sin that are really important for you to consider, and that's sins against others. Sins against others. These are things that you do or that you say that hurt others in the process of them. Very likely, people that you've sinned against the most are the people who are closest to you. And so ask God, Lord, are there ways that I've sinned against you? And here's the powerful thing. When we sin against God and we confess to God, God, please forgive me. I know what I've done wrong. That what happens is, what's the result? It's forgiveness. But listen carefully. When we sin against others and we confess that, the result of confessing your sin against someone else to that person is that there can be healing. And so this prayer, God, show me if there's any offensive way in me, it's really a way to say, Lord, don't make my relationship with you right, but also fix these relationships in my life that I've just brought a mess to. This is why our life groups are so important. This is why it's so important for you to be in community regularly, in relationship with other people who believe the same things about Jesus that you do, so that you can say to them on a regular basis, hey, this is what I did wrong. This is how I need help. This is how I need you to hold me accountable. You want to change? You want to grow? You want to have God search your heart? Bring some other people into the process. Well, so far he's prayed, search me, and he's prayed to expose my fears, and he's prayed, reveal my sins. But look at the fourth, final part of this unsafe prayer. Lead me. Lead me in the way everlasting. I want you to recognize, some of us here, we've got a one-dimensional relationship with God. We ask God to do things for us. We look for God to somehow satisfy us, pour out peace and joy in the midst of difficult things. We want Him to heal us of things that are broken or sick about us. We're all the time approaching God and asking Him to do things for us. But I want you to understand what the Scriptures present is not a one-dimensional relationship with God. It's about not only asking God for things, but it is in large measure saying to God, God, I'll take the next step with you. You show me where to go. You show me where you want me to go. You show me how you want me to change. You show me how you want me to give my money. You show me how you want me to spend my time. You show me how I can fix this relationship with this person I love in my life. And then you take that step. And that's how you're led in the way everlasting. The Christian life, it's all about the next step. It's all about following. Not just about receiving and waiting on God. It's also taking active steps to go where He's going. Matthew 4, Jesus calls His disciples and he says this. He says, come, follow me. That's the picture of what it means to have a relationship with God. You're going somewhere with Him. He's taking you somewhere. And I just would point out to you that when you hear all the stuff in this prayer, you may think to yourself, boy, I don't know. I don't know if I want to pray like that. I don't know if I want to give that God that kind of open book in my life. I don't know if I want God to really look deep inside of me. And then I don't know if I want to listen to what He has to say. But I just want for you to recognize, what may seem unsafe to you, it's actually the safest place. Now everybody here is applying these words in a different way. But I want to invite you today. Make this prayer your prayer.